An ancient Sicilian town is being torn apart as 1,500 people are evacuated from a landslide crisis that scientists say could end in total destruction. But this is not just a landslide. This is an entire mountain collapsing beneath a community that has stood for centuries. Picture families running from their homes as the ground literally splits open underneath them. A 5-kilometer crack, over 3 miles long, is ripping through the heart of Niscemi. Houses are falling into the abyss within minutes. Roads severed, an entire town cut off from the world as the earth beneath it slides toward oblivion. But here is what has officials in complete panic. This exact same hillside failed catastrophically in 1997. 27 years ago. The warnings were written in the ground. The historical records documented it. Yet thousands of people continued living on terrain that scientists knew could collapse again. And now, in the aftermath of Storm Harry's unprecedented rainfall, that nightmare is becoming reality. The mountain is still moving. The cracks are still spreading. Geological monitoring shows no signs of it stopping. Are we watching an ancient community slide into extinction? Or is there any force on Earth that can stop a mountain from swallowing an entire town? The crisis begins with a crack. Provincial Road SP10, a critical artery connecting Niscemi to the outside world, collapses without warning. Residents notice the pavement has simply vanished, swallowed by the unstable hillside beneath. Within 1 hour, the destruction accelerates beyond anyone's worst fears. Families inside their homes watch in horror as cracks appear on building stairways. The fractures spread across walls with terrifying speed. There is no time to pack, no time to save possessions accumulated over lifetimes. Residents grab children and flee into the streets with nothing but the clothes on their backs and whatever emergency bags they can grab in seconds. Behind them, homes that stood for generations split open like eggshells and tumble into the abyss below. Mayor Massimiliano Conti issues an emergency declaration at dawn. The red zone encompasses the most dangerous areas, and the evacuation order is immediate and non-negotiable. His assessment is brutally direct. The situation has worsened. The landslide is still ongoing. The front measures 5 kilometers long, a crack stretching 3.7 miles through the heart of the community. Houses have already collapsed. A scenic viewpoint plunges 100 feet down the mountainside, revealing the terrifying steepness of the slope failure. By mid-morning, between 1,100 and 1,500 displaced residents had crowded into emergency shelters at the local sports facility. Polisoccorso civil protection volunteers mobilized, but the scale immediately overwhelmed their resources. Families arrived traumatized, children crying, and elderly residents required medical attention that stretched volunteers to their limits. But officials warn this is only the beginning. The evacuation zone may need to expand as geological monitoring continues to reveal ongoing instability. Infrastructure collapses across the region. Provincial Road SP10 becomes completely impassable. SP12, already closed from previous slope failures, deepens Niscemi's isolation. Only SP11 remains operational, a single road now bearing impossible traffic loads. The road already carries the grim nickname Road of Death due to its history of fatal accidents. Now it represents the sole remaining connection between Niscemi and the cities of Gela, Caltanissetta, and Palermo. The traffic overload multiplies existing dangers, creating new hazards by the hour as desperate residents flee the collapsing mountainside. The numbers reveal a geological nightmare unfolding in real time. The landslide front stretches 5 kilometers across the mountainside. That's 3.7 miles of continuous failure. The affected area measures approximately 1 square kilometer of terrain, actively sliding toward the valley below. A scenic viewpoint has collapsed, dropping 100 feet straight down, exposing the terrifying steepness of the slope and the vertical distance this community could fall. Scientists examining the disaster site describe conditions that make stable ground impossible. Nishemi sits on clay sand units, geological materials that become unstable when water saturates them. The terrain exhibits what researchers call Calanchi erosion, deeply carved Badland-style gullies where weak clay layers have been sculpted away by water runoff over centuries. The town sits on geology that has been carved hollow from the inside. The Italian Landslide Research Institute, IRPICNR, confirms the terrifying reality. The current collapse is developing within terrain already affected by previous landslides. Weak clay layers alternate with sand deposits, creating internal slip planes where geological materials can slide past each other with minimal resistance. When the unprecedented rainfall from Storm Harry saturated these layers, the physics inside the hillside fundamentally changed. Water infiltration raises what scientists call pore pressure, the force of water filling spaces between individual grains of soil and rock. Rising pore pressure reduces the friction holding those grains together. Slopes that appeared stable for decades transform into sliding masses within hours. This is not abstract theory. This is exactly what monitoring equipment detected beneath Nishemi as the storm dumped hundreds of millimeters of rain onto unstable ground. The slide direction reveals gravity's relentless pull. The failing terrain is moving toward the valley system in the Mario area below. Material flows downhill into natural drainage lines, following paths carved by water over geological time. IRPICNR classifies the event as very large scale, a technical assessment that barely captures the catastrophic reality facing residents. But the most terrifying detail emerges from the timeline. The January 16th landslide was not a single event. It was the first phase. What Nishemi faces now is reactivation, a multi-episode instability period where pulses of movement continue long after the rain stops falling. The storm delivers fury like a hurricane. The Mediterranean cyclone, what meteorologists call a metacane, slams into Sicily with tsunami-style waves reaching 30 to 40 feet. Massive walls of water punch directly into coastal villages with devastating force. This is not typical winter weather. This is nature operating at catastrophic intensity. The storm delivers exceptional rainfall, measured in hundreds of millimeters within a compressed time frame. Rain that should fall over weeks dumps in hours. Wind gusts spike to 120 kilometers per hour, 75 miles per hour, a sustained assault on already vulnerable infrastructure. Storm surge drives extreme waves up to 10 meters, 33 feet of water, overwhelming coastal defenses across the region. Sicily bears the worst of Harry's wrath, but the devastation spreads far beyond the island. Calabria, Sardinia, and Malta all report catastrophic damage. Widespread landslides trigger across the entire affected region. Nishemi is not an isolated incident. Dozens of slope failures occur simultaneously as the storm's unprecedented rainfall saturates unstable geology across hundreds of square kilometers. The timing proves catastrophic. When rain falls hard enough and long enough, it does not just flood streets. It triggers geological catastrophe. The clay-rich layers beneath Nishemi weaken dramatically as water infiltrates the hillside. This is the wrong weather hitting the wrong geology at the wrong time, a perfect convergence of meteorological and geological disaster. Metacanes are rare, but climate scientists warn they are intensifying. Harry's concentrated rainfall exceeds historical records for the region. Local totals measured in single storm events surpass what previous generations experienced in entire seasons. These are perfect conditions for triggering mass slope failure. The trigger mechanism operates with brutal physics. Extreme rainfall infiltrates the hillside. Water fills the spaces between individual grains of soil and clay. Pore pressure rises between those grains. The effective clamping force holding the geological materials together collapses. Old slip surfaces from the 1997 failure reactivate with terrifying speed. This is not abstract scientific theory. Monitoring equipment beneath Nishemi recorded exactly this sequence as Storm Harry unleashed its fury. The landslide occurring now is the direct result of meteorological conditions that overwhelmed geological stability that barely existed in the first place. October 12, 1997. A major landslide devastates the Santa Croce area of Nisquemi. The disaster inflicts massive damage on buildings and infrastructure throughout the same neighborhood, experiencing catastrophic failure today. Italian authorities document the event in the National Landslide Database, Progetto A51, classifying it as a defining disaster with long-term impacts on the community. The warning could not have been clearer. The 1990s reveal a pattern written in collapsing earth. Multiple landslides strike Nisquemi and surrounding areas year after year. Provincial roads suffer repeated hits from slope failures. The historical archive contains year-by-year listings documenting the recurring hazard. This zone has a known history of serious slope failure spanning decades, yet thousands of people continue living on terrain that geological records prove is fundamentally unstable. Residents fleeing the current disaster express shock and anger. Many say they were not notified by anyone, but the notification exists in historical records accessible to anyone who looks. Did authorities deliberately ignore documented patterns of catastrophic failure? Or is the reality far more troubling? Perhaps evacuation from unstable terrain is simply not feasible on an island where safe ground barely exists. The impossible choice facing Sicilians becomes brutally clear. You cannot live on Mount Etna's slopes. The active volcano threatens constant eruption, and the eastern flank is sliding into the sea. You cannot live on the unstable clay hills, where towns like Nisquemi perch precariously. Economic reality compounds the nightmare. These villages are not wealthy communities with multiple homes and relocation options. Where do people go when their homeland is inherently unstable? Infrastructure built directly in failure zones guarantees repeated disasters. Provincial roads, SP10, SP11, and SP12 all sit in documented hazard terrain. Why not relocate these critical arteries? Private land ownership complicates matters. Geological constraints limit options. Cost factors prevent expensive rerouting projects. This is exactly the kind of repeating hazard pattern that dooms communities. The question haunts every discussion of prevention. Could drainage systems have helped? Would enhanced monitoring have provided earlier warning? Can you truly secure a hill exhibiting Comanche geology? The hard answer geologists provide is devastating. Hardly. Maybe not at all. Residents describe watching their lives disappear in real time. My home collapsed. In just an hour, my whole life swept away. One resident recounts the devastating speed of destruction. A lifetime of sacrifices for this house, decades of work and savings, vanished into the abyss below. The two-story home now stands half open, its missing portion consumed by the collapsing mountainside. Another family shares their desperate flight to safety. Parents built this house 30 years ago with all their savings. Every penny they earned went into construction, creating a home meant to shelter generations. Now it falls within the red zone, the designation that means total loss. We saw the provincial road collapse, then noticed cracks spreading across our building stairs. Without wasting time, we decided to leave without taking anything with us. Behind them, the structure splits apart and tumbles downhill. Business owners face a financial catastrophe that extends beyond residential losses. We have a business in that area currently under management. It falls within the red zone. Years of investment and daily operation, jobs for local workers, economic activity sustaining families, all threatened with complete destruction. There is no insurance coverage for geological collapse. No government compensation is adequate to rebuild lives and livelihoods erased by sliding earth. Agricultural operations throughout affected zones grind to a halt. Workers cannot reach farms. Students cannot access schools. The emergency impacts the community on an enormous scale. The local economy collapses as transportation networks fail and businesses shutter. Emergency shelter conditions reveal the humanitarian crisis unfolding. Families crowd into sports facilities, sleeping wherever space exists. Children cry for homes they will never see again. Elderly residents require medical attention that overwhelmed volunteers struggle to provide. Medical supplies stretch dangerously thin. The scale of displacement exceeds every preparation and contingency plan. The psychological toll compounds daily. Residents watch their homes crack and collapse in real time through news footage and drone surveillance. The knowledge that return is impossible, that entire neighborhoods no longer exist, breaks spirits already traumatized by frantic evacuation. Community bonds sever as families scatter to different shelters and relatives' homes across Sicily. Frustration boils into anger. We hope the region will intervene. Words must be translated into action. But what action remains possible when the mountain itself is failing? Provincial Road SP10 closes completely. Slope instability makes the route entirely impassable. Sections of pavement have simply vanished into the sliding hillside. Provincial Road SP12, already closed from earlier slope failures, deepens the crisis. Two critical arteries are severed. Only SP11 remains operational, a single road now bearing traffic loads it was never designed to handle. The implications spread across Sicily's interior. 3 major cities lose their primary connections. Gela, Caltanissetta, and Palermo depend on these provincial routes for commerce, emergency services, and daily transportation. Niscemi finds itself described as almost isolated, multiple connections compromised simultaneously. A town suddenly cut off from the world as geological forces sever its lifelines. SP11 already carries a grim reputation. Locals call it the Road of Death, a nickname earned through years of fatal accidents on its winding, dangerous route. The road's existing hazards made it notorious across the region. Now exceptional traffic overflow multiplies those risks exponentially. Vehicles crowd the narrow pavement in desperate attempts to bypass the closed routes. The sole remaining artery between major population centers operates at capacity, and that guarantees accidents. Officials warn there are no immediate solutions for the traffic crisis. Economic activity across the region grinds toward paralysis. Supply chains fail as transport trucks cannot navigate closed or overloaded routes. Businesses lose the ability to move goods to markets. Workers cannot reach their jobs. Students find themselves cut off from schools. Agricultural products rot in warehouses as farmers watch their livelihoods disappear along with road access. The question of repair reveals the full scope of the nightmare. How can they restore infrastructure that is still cracking and sinking? Urgent intervention is desperately needed, but the ground remains fundamentally unstable. You cannot rebuild roads on active landslide terrain. Consolidation efforts require geological stability first, and that stability may never return. This is not a temporary road closure measured in days or weeks. Complete geological stabilization must occur before reconstruction can even begin. That process may take months or years. Some roads may never be rebuilt in their current locations. The mountain is still moving, and infrastructure built on sliding earth has no future. Sicily's transportation vulnerability stands completely exposed. Geological monitoring teams deploy emergency equipment across the unstable zone. Inclinometers track ground displacement in real time. GPS systems measure movement rates down to millimeters per hour. Drones conduct continuous surveillance, mapping crack propagation as the slide evolves. Ground-penetrating radar analyzes subsurface conditions, searching for signs of further collapse. The data flowing from these instruments reveal a terrifying reality. Movement continues. The most critical threat geologists monitor is retrogressive movement. The headscarp, the top edge of the landslide, is migrating upslope. This is what geologists always look for first when assessing slope stability. Retrogressive movement can expand the failure zone to engulf structures currently outside the red zone. It can be fatal if monitoring misses the warning signs. Drainage control attempts offer limited hope. Engineers install surface water diversion systems where terrain allows access. Temporary pumping operations extract groundwater from critical zones. But the brutal reality cannot be avoided. Water will still infiltrate these clay layers. Comparison to similar disasters provides no comfort. In Brienz, Austria, engineers constructed massive drainage tunnels, attempting to stop mountain collapse. The tunnels have not worked. The mountain continues sliding toward the village below. Road closures will persist until stability is assured and reassessed. That timeline, in expert opinion, will take considerable time. Months at minimum, possibly years. Some routes may require permanent rerouting away from unstable geology. The red zone itself may need expansion. Additional structures sit at risk as monitoring reveals continued instability. How many more residents face displacement remains unknown. This is not an isolated incident unique to Nicemi. Sicily contains vast areas with chronic slope instability. Weak sedimentary units, combined with human construction and intense rainfall, create recurring disasters across the island. Nicemi is not random bad luck. It is a case study of what happens when all risk factors converge. Climate change amplifies every threat. Mediterranean cyclones are intensifying. Extreme rainfall events occur with increasing frequency. Storm Harry demonstrates that these systems can trigger landslides across wide regions simultaneously. What appeared stable for decades can fail in hours when unprecedented weather strikes vulnerable geology. The questions no one can answer multiply daily. Can you feel safe anywhere? Nicemi's crisis is far from over. The mountain continues moving. Geological monitoring confirms ongoing instability across the failure zone. More than 1,500 people remain displaced from their homes with no timeline for return. Many will never return. Their homes no longer exist, consumed by the collapsing hillside or designated too dangerous for habitation. Infrastructure remains severed across the region. Provincial roads, SP10 and SP12, stay closed indefinitely. SP11 operates beyond capacity, the sole remaining artery bearing impossible traffic loads. Economic paralysis spreads as businesses fail and agricultural operations collapse. The community that existed before Storm Harry arrived has been fundamentally shattered. More rain is forecast. Weather systems approaching Sicily carry moisture that will worsen the already catastrophic instability. Each rainfall event triggers additional pulses of movement. The slide does not stop when precipitation ends. Clay-rich slopes continue failing for weeks or months after initial saturation. Additional structures will collapse. The red zone will expand. More families will flee. This is Sicily's geological reality, not a random anomaly. The island sits on unstable terrain where weak sedimentary units create chronic landslide risk. Climate change intensifies every threat. Mediterranean cyclones deliver concentrated rainfall capable of triggering catastrophic slope failures across entire regions simultaneously. Storm Harry provided devastating proof of this accelerating pattern. Other coastal areas face similar vulnerabilities. Unstable geology exists throughout the Mediterranean basin and beyond. Communities built on terrain that appeared stable for generations now face unprecedented rainfall intensities that geological materials cannot withstand. The question is not whether more disasters will occur, but when and where. The hard truth emerges with brutal clarity. Some places may simply be too dangerous to inhabit. History screamed warnings that authorities and residents ignored or could not afford to heed. When geology, weather, and human settlement collide, geology always wins. Mountains do not compromise. Slopes do not negotiate. How many more Nicemis are waiting to happen across Sicily and beyond? How many communities sit unknowingly on terrain that will fail when the next extreme storm strikes? Will we learn from this disaster and relocate vulnerable populations? Or will we watch the same catastrophe repeat until the lessons are written in enough collapsed homes and shattered lives? The mountain is still moving. The question is, who else is in its path?